Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bumpy Road Brewery's live first installment of Multi Mondays.
Yeah.
This originally was going to be the West Coast IPA. Looking under some of the guidelines from the BJCP, couldn't find anything that was strictly West Coast IPA. It kind of just jumbles a few IPAs into one American style IPA. So
West Coast IPA is a really good way to describe the West Coast of the United States and their brewing techniques and flavors you get from the American IPA style.
All right. So who's on our panel tonight?
So in our awesome panel, I'm just going to go right across the top to my right. We got John and Ellie, Georgia Beer Reviews.
Hi.
Yep, there he is. He's
Hello,
smiling.
thanks for having me.
Welcome. I want to thank all of you guys for joining in on this. Right next to John, we have Thrash, Metal, Homebrew, and Barbecue, and also venturing into refurbishing old computers. So he's AKA Brian.
AKA Brian. Yeah, that guy.
Right below Thrash, we have Drunken One.
Hi guys. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
AKA a bunch of other names.
Marky, Dio,
and then swinging over right below me, we have Eric, who is also more well known as
Thomas Metal.
Thomas Metal.
There
we go.
Masters of Beer Reviews, look it up. Thomas Metal 75. YouTube it, and you'll find me.
There you go.
And he also is part of a metal band.
Oh yeah.
So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to bring up, do a little share screen of what the guidelines are for an American style IPA. Try to briefly read through it, do some of the history on it, just to bring some insight. We won't try to drag it out and read the whole thing. I don't want to be too boring on it, but I think some history and stuff like that is cool. So we'll go with that, and then we'll go through the panel again, and everybody can show kind of what beer they brought. And this kind of like the Wild Card Wednesdays, when we kind of get down to it, where we go person to person drinking and talking about what they have for the said style. So let me go get the share screen going here. Application window. Let's bring this one up and share.
All right,
so
awesome. There you go.
Under the overall impression of the American IPA, it says a decidedly hoppy and bitter, moderately strong American pale ale, showcasing modern American or New World hop varietals. The balance is hop forward with a clean fermentation profile, dryish finish, and clean supporting malt, allowing a creative range of hop character to shine through. So it should have some malt and some hop characters. Now I'm going to lose my screen. There we go. Let's see. It says color ranges from medium gold to light reddish amber. Should be clear, although unfiltered dry hop versions may be a bit hazy.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. You get the aromas. I mean, this is kind of a mashed in style. So, I mean, it's going to go anywhere from the resinous, spicy, tropical fruit, stone fruit, berry, melon, etc. Lots of floral pine notes and citrus as well.
Yeah.
Flavors.
Low to medium.
Should reflect an American or New World hop character, such as citrus, floral pine, resinous, spicy, tropical fruit, stone fruit, berry, melon, etc. Medium to very high hop bitterness, so there shouldn't be a low bitterness level in these at all. We don't really care about the mouthfeel. We'll pass by that because everything different. Comments now. Comments they do say a modern American craft beer interpretation of the historical English style, brewed using American ingredients and attitude, the basis for many modern variations, including the stronger double IPA, as well as IPAs with various other ingredients. So that's the modern day version of the American IPA. It does say those other IPAs should generally be entered into a specialty IPA style. So
But these
history.
I don't like how it says.
these are.
I don't like how they do that either, because it's like they say that it fits in there, but then they say it should be entered into something else.
Right. Well,
I don't like how it says oak is inappropriate. You notice how it says oak is inappropriate for this style.
Oh, yeah.
One of the best IPAs that I've ever had was aged in rum oak barrels, and it was awesome. It was called the Founders Barrel Runner Mosaic Hopped IPA. So the BJCP is a good guideline to go by, but as far as like getting some really good beers and stuff, I don't really look to it too much, other than just like for a general guideline.
Yeah.
But like the oak age thing kind of perturbs me, because if anybody out there knows, I mean, you guys all know that I love my oak age stuff. So like, if anything, and you put something in oak, it's going to make it better.
Well, two things about that. One is these are called guidelines, so use them as a guideline, not as rules. And they have to have guidelines for competition purposes to medal and compete.
Exactly.
The other thing is that I think as far as the oaky is inappropriate, you're not buying an IPA going, wonder how oaky this one's going to be. But then again, guidelines, Americans do take bunch. The great thing about a lot of American craft beers, we take a bunch of styles and we adapt them to we literally make things our own. So sometimes you'll find that stuff, like John was saying, in IPA land. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I do see in this little historical thing, it does bring up oak again, so that might be brought back up by John. It says the first modern American craft beer example is generally believed to be the Anchor Liberty Ale.
Yeah.
Right.
First brewed in 1975 and using whole Cascade hops, the style has pushed beyond that original beer, which now tastes more like an American pale ale in comparison. American-made IPAs from early eras were not unknown, particularly with well-regarded Valentine's IPA, an oak-aged beer using an Old English recipe.
Yeah, sure.
The style is based on the modern craft beer examples.
Sweet. So what examples of the beer have we brought tonight?
We will get off of this share screen. Stop sharing.
I'm just trying to help work through this. I'm not trying to say your way is wrong and my way is right, but we got a little insight to it all. What are we drinking tonight?
At least when I think of a West Coast IPA, I think of beers that have a really big that can have a bigger, sharper upfront bitterness, can have a little bit of like the resins and the oils from hops. Also, I usually think of like a two-row pale maltiness or a caramel toffee kind of a sweetness. So that's generally what I look for when I want a West Coast style, as say opposed to a hazy, juicy, smooth, fluffy beer, or the East Coast that's almost more British.
I agree.
More floral, fruitier notes.
More piney notes, more grapefruity notes.
Not
the orangey.
So those are the kind of those are the kind of American IPAs we're looking at.
Yeah, American IPA according to the BJCP, but we break it down even further. West Coast, New England style. Obviously, the West Coast is going to be your more piney, grapefruit and bitter, whereas the New England is more tropical, fruity, a little bit more hazy. Hop character is up there, but the bitterness is low. So we're going for more of the bitterness and the traditional American IPAs according to the BJCP guidelines, because the New England IPAs are relatively new. The New England IPAs are relatively new compared to the West Coast style, the original IPA style. So
and I can go back. I still left that screen up so we can go back because you notice the vitals and stuff like that. The vitals don't match up to what I brought at least.
40 to 70 IPAs was the main thing I noticed there. Which is interesting because 40 to 70 IBUs is normal for an American, your American IPAs. The New England IPAs are like 30 to 40 typically, a lot lower on the bitterness scale for the New England style.
So we're dealing with
the hop introduction after the boil.
Exactly.
So just to let everybody know that's out there watching, if you don't know us, there's 3 homebrewers on here, so it's going to get seriously geeky on that point. And then we have 2 really, really good, reviewers, John Anelli and Eric from Thomas Metal 75.
Yeah.
And we're all beer reviewers as well. So
I don't review, but yeah, good point there, Brian. Good point. Yeah, we have 3 home brewers and two very good reviewers. We got 2 home brewers and 2 very good reviewers. Okay, so what
I want to do is just say cheers to the chat real quick. We got Ronnie S. We got the rest of the panel in here. Jacob Downey stopped in, said some stuff. Hopefully he's still hanging out. Also, guys, if you are in the chat and you want to come on this, most of you are in the links that we have. That's in the chat right now. I can put the link into the chat as long as you bring in the style. So right now it's an American style IPA. So if you don't have like straight up West Coast style, just bring in an American style IPA. And you can join in with us at any time that you would like to. I'll bring you in. We can only have the six panel members at a time, but we can rotate through. But with that said, let's go ahead and start with John and Nelly and see what West Coast American style IPA he brought.
All right, so I've got one that I've never had before. I'm very excited to try it. It is from New Belgium. This is from the Voodoo Ranger series. This is the Starship IPA. I already poured it. It poured with a pretty nice head, which is kind of dissipated. You got some nice lacing going there. It looks more almost like a New England style. It's very hazy, but in the BJCP guidelines, they did say that some of these American more West Coast style bitter beers, they don't necessarily have to be filtered, and that's what you get when you get an unfiltered IPA. It looks like that, almost like juice. So a little bit of information on this beer. It says on the website that it does have a slight haze for the appearance, the aroma, citrus, grapefruit, guava, mango, and pine. So typically with the West Coast style, pine and grapefruit are your 2 leading aromas. So it's interesting because it's almost like they're trying to go for a melding of the 2, like of a New England and a West Coast, because guava and mango, more of your tropical fruits, that's what you get more with the New England IPA. They do use Cascade hops, Galaxy hops, which makes sense. Starship IPA, right? Space, Galaxy. So Galaxy hops are the main hops that they're using in here. They do dry hop it. And the malts are pale Munich and oats. They do use oats in here, which probably is responsible a little bit too for the hazy appearance. And I did pour it in my Voodoo Ranger glass, which I thought was appropriate for this beer. If anybody is interested, you already know, New Belgium is out of Asheville, North Carolina, and Fort Collins, Colorado. So they have 2 breweries. Colorado, I think, was the Fort Collins, Colorado. And then they expanded up to Asheville, North Carolina. 50 IBUs, 7.7% alcohol. Do you want me to go ahead and give you a breakdown, or do you want to come back around? How do you want to do it, BuMpY?
If you want to go ahead and do your breakdown on it, like how it smells, how it tastes.
I can do a breakdown.
Yeah.
All right, so you already got the appearance. It's a hazy, almost juice-like appearance. I would say that's like a light orange color with a very frothy head that's leaving lacing around, or some nice lacing there. The aroma, I'm getting some tangerine. I'm getting grapefruit, definitely grapefruit, which reminds me of a West Coast IPA. I mean, that's the first thing I think of when I think of a West Coast IPA, or grapefruit and pine notes. Now, I'm not so much getting the pine as much as I'm getting the grapefruit, but it is there in the background. Maybe a touch of tropical fruit. I'm not really experienced enough with guava to really be able to give you a good description of that, but I am getting a little bit of tropical fruit, maybe some pineapple or mango, but mostly the grapefruit with that pine. And it does smell slightly bready on the aroma as well. So cheers.
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 Alex, where you at, Alex?
New Jersey.
All right. So yeah.
Wise guy, yeah.
More thanks, Ronnie. Yeah. This is I got this glass at Taco Mac. I don't go every Thursday, but you go on Thursday night, they give you a free glass, and it's a different brewery every week. So anyway, the taste with this, more along the lines of a West Coast IPA. The grapefruit's coming through, a little bit of that piney bitterness, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that is really indicative of a West Coast style IPA, is that piney note that you get with that style. It does have a little bit more of a smoothness to it than most West Coast IPAs because it is unfiltered and it does have the oats in there. So it's got more, I don't want to say creamy mouthfeel, but it's a little bit more smooth than most of the West Coast IPAs that I've had. I am getting a little bit of tropical fruit as well, some tangerine in addition to the grapefruit, and maybe just a touch of mango. So it's kind of like a balance. It's more balanced than a lot of the West Coast style IPAs that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
The body is medium. The alcohol, 7.7%, is pretty much non-existent. You could get into a lot of trouble drinking this beer. The finish is relatively dry. The bitterness for me with the West Coast IPAs becomes a little bit too much. It does have a lingering bitterness, and it dries out the mouth. So it is very dry, which is definitely along the BJCP guidelines. They do say that it's more of a dry finishing beer. You're definitely getting the dryish finish, like they say, with this beer. I think it's a very good beer. This is my first time trying it. I like all of the Voodoo Ranger beers that I've had. This one's no exception. It's a good beer. Would I call it a true representation of a West Coast? Probably not. It's more in the middle. Like if you take a New England IPA and a West Coast IPA and meld the two together, that's what you're getting with this beer. So my first thoughts are that I really like it, and I'll come back around later when we're doing ratings or whatever. But I think it's a good beer.
Awesome.
Yeah, your video feed is definitely lagging a little bit. We hear what you said, and then you were still like a second or two behind us.
That's all right. As long as you can hear what I say, it doesn't really matter. I'm not too pretty to look at, so as long as my audio is okay.
Observation. Yeah, Ronnie said it was a little bit laggy. Oh well, sounds like a good beer.
It does sound good, and it is cool that it does meet some of the, like you said, the dry finish and stuff like that. So it does meet some of those. Plus, it's American, and a lot of those notes you said tropical and stuff like that, which typically I don't think you'd find in like a West Coast style IPA, but it was in the American style IPA. So we'll move on to.
But it definitely has the piney notes and the grapefruit notes, which are specific to the West Coast. So it does have those as well.
Nice. Are you ready, Brian?
I'm ready. So
you're going to be presented.
Presentation. Oh boy, I hate that bit. All right.
So as you can see, this is to style SRM wise. This is a homebrew that I made. I call it an El Dorado IPA. It is to the style of the West Coast IPA. It's been in keg for probably a month and a half, so clarity has achieved greatness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. No, that's sexy. That looks very nice.
And I got the notes.
You took all my words out of my mouth.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. It is, isn't it? Look at the head. Right? Look, the lacing actually.
Yeah. So that's the carapils in it, but it's among the guidelines. It has 2-row in it. So this was made with 9 pounds of 2-row. Carapils I use for body and head retention, and that's why you have good head retention with it. As a pound of that, half a pound of Crystal 40, which is where you got your sweetness malts, slight roasts in there. Hops that were used was El Dorado, of course, and it was El Dorado throughout, so it had a total of 2 ounces of hops for a 5-gallon batch. And used USO5, which is a really clean yeast. That's my go-to yeast. And yeah, you can see right through that thing.
Yeah, the mug right through there. Hell yeah.
So the ending numbers on this thing came out as a 6% alcohol by volume. I achieved over 75% efficiency. Usually I'm around 83% efficiency. Bitterness, 70 IBUs. So that's right at the top of the scale of the bitterness units. And let's see, colors of 5.1, so that falls in line as well. So it is a true Western style IPA. It has the piney notes from that pine resin. It's got that. It's got some floral notes in there because El Dorado really has some really good notes on it. Let's see. Let me read this about El Dorado hops. They're utilized for their high alpha bittering characteristics, best known for sweet candy-like aromas, strong bittering, aromatic notes of cherry, mango complement. I usually don't get the mangoes on the types of beers that I make with it, but I bet if you used it more as an aroma and flavoring hop, you'd probably see more of that. they're usually used as in pale ales as well as IPAs and some wheat beers. So it's grown in the Moxie Valley subregion of the Yakima Valley, Washington. So it's on the West Coast as well. So cheers, everybody.
Sweet.
Cheers.
Nice. Cheers to you, sir. Cheers to you. That looks awesome. Love that glass lacing. Look at that. It's, as a home brewer, I strive for that. You know, that looks awesome.
Where you get like layers. Every drink that you get another ring. All the way down until you're done.
Like rings on a tree. Yeah,
like you have splotch lacing on a lot of beers, but when Brian's lacing, I would describe it almost as like a creamy lacing. It's like
sexy.
It's a different type of lacing, and to me, that means it indicates a higher quality beer.
Yeah, very malty. I mean, you got one thing about homebrews compared to what you usually get in a can. If it's not fresh, homebrews are usually more malty, more sweeter, more well-bodied than its brother that's out there from the big brewers. You know what I mean? So we concentrate more as a home brewer on the freshness because we love the fresh beer. Everybody loves a fresh beer, but sometimes you can't get a fresh beer. So you're getting a 4 or 5 week old beer and it's lost a lot of its bitterness. And, you know, as a home brewer, I can make it anytime I want. So I like to make people jealous.
And that does it right there. Look at that does it right there. Look at the clarity. And
you got it. You have succeeded, my friend.
Cheers.
Nice.
Cheers. You made that thing spot on.
I know, right? That's awesome.
As far as we know, you did. Yes, sir.
All right.
So Thrash, you good?
I'm good, man.
All right.
He's
we will
golden.
hit the chat real quick. Just bring up some of these things where we kind of left off. So cheers to FACP monitoring for joining in.
Yeah.
Urban South Grapefruit IPA, the best that I've ever had. The Voodoo Ranger is a good one as well.
Voodoo Ranger, yep.
Never had Urban South. Anybody else?
Never heard of it.
No,
I've never heard of it either.
I've heard of it. I
Have you
just
had
haven't had
the
it.
new Voodoo Ranger American Haze yet? Ronnie wants to know.
I can't find it, man. I can't find it.
And then
Yes, I
as
put in the comments. Yeah, there you go.
all right. Nice session at 5%. Thomas Metal says nice. Ronnie says, yeah, I liked it as well. Kind of a lighter version of a Juicy Haze.
Nice.
Cool. Exactly. IPA, my fave beer, says Metalhead 1990.
Same here.
Yeah.
Cheers, Metalhead, for joining in. He says, cheers, boys.
Cheers, brother.
We got Flacco. Flacco, if you have an American IPA, a West Coast IPA, or even an East Coast IPA, come on in. Multi Monday. It will be a Monday thing.
No shalada.
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll do it for as long as I think that it's going okay.
Sure. I think it's going to go well. I think it's going to go really well. BuMpy, I think it's going to go really well. We got a great start.
Oh,
Well,
Blake
we're gonna
TV,
be on
thank you for popping in.
sweet. Very good job. Nice presentation so far, guys.
And then, I had an old Four Peaks hop knot with it being 10 years old.
What?
And a new label. So it wasn't a 10-year-old beer that you drank. It's just been out for 10 years. Okay.
Oh, that's how I was. Oh, crap.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
Beer,
I,
man. You're right.
I
I
was
thought you had an Alex beer.
8 p.m. here.
Revamped in marketing. All right, good.
All right. So
Oh,
now we will
Oh boy.
we'll
Okay.
move on now to Drunken One. Oh, I almost
Oh,
removed it.
boy. All right.
Hit the right button.
All right. So I don't mean to prima donna this whole thing, but here I'm gonna start with this, right? All right. So you get the idea, right? Okay. So I kind of thought we were gonna do this a little different. We were gonna show what we were drinking and then go back around. Hopefully my camera doesn't script right now.
Yeah, this is it's a new thing, everyone. We'll work out the kinks.
Oh yes, sir. No, this is great. I'm having a great time so far. Wow, I hate being presented, but anyway, this one
I don't have to. You don't want to be?
No, it's okay, I guess. I brought there you go. At least this part. The Stone's Neverending Haze IPA. This is obviously Stone Brewing. This is 35 IBUs. I'm looking at their You want to screen share me? Give me just a second. Let me screen share, and I'll talk on the back side of it, I guess. If you would please present that, and then yeah, it says thank you. It says about the beer. It's the West Coast. Here it says, and here it says about the beer, and the appearance is the golden orange, visible haze, and nice tight one. The foam head. My head's kind of gone away, but it's got mosaic and citra as the hops. It's got intense orange and lime up front, with followed by oats, lemon, pineapple, starfruit. I don't know what a starfruit is. I'm not getting any of that in the flavor. The aroma is awesome. It does smell like the orange and the pineapple. It definitely has that. The aroma is dank orange peel floral. I can agree with that also. I'm not really good with beer reviews because my nostrils don't work so well. But this is a very good beer. The weird thing about this one is it's only a 4% beer. It's 35 IBUs, but 34 IBUs or whatever, wherever it's at there. But it's actually very light in ABV. I'm digging it so far. I poured it in totally wrong glass. It's hazy to the look. The head had died down a bit, but I went ahead and got a second one because they're only 4%. But so far, I'm enjoying it. Hopefully, it represents the style that we're speaking about well, because that's the one I had, and I thought I was doing the right thing. Very happy with it. It's a fairly new beer, this one. It came out in, it says release date was December 16th of 2019. So Stone Brewing has just come out with this beer, but it seems like a good offering, very sessionable at 4%. So far, I'm really digging it. Yeah, the wife just on a whim picked it up because the can art looked nice. One more time with the can art, I guess. Yeah, you'll see if we can find some of that Neverending Haze, and it isn't definitely hazy. I don't have a whole lot of background or anything more than that, really, to be very honest. It says, excuse me, drink fresh. It is a 4% beer at 35 IBU, so it's not super bitter, but it does have a very tropical flavor to it. Mm. I guess that's what I got for now.
Nice. Yeah, but with that being low, like low in ABV, having a lower IBU to it, it's gonna kind of allow the hops still the bitterness and stuff like that to still come.
It really does. Yeah, the mouthfeel is a little thinner than most. I love that whole Voodoo Ranger series. That's some good beers there too. But so the mouthfeel is a little thin. It's got all the flavor to it though, and yeah, at 4% you can drink a handful of them and not be too off your rocker. No, I'm digging it so far.
Nice.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to drop the banner, and we're going to go to Post Metal.
Small beer and not spill beer, even though it's all the way.
Whoops. Tom's come back in.
All right, yeah. Cheers, Metalhead 1990 and Thrash Metal, and all the fellow metal fans watching, drinking beers with us. Yeah. So I'm glad that somebody brought us here in Nevada, and this is the one that I've been wanting to try since I heard about it recently, and I think it is a recent beer. It's 2020 spring seasonal now. It is January, but yes, Stone. Damn it, Sierra Nevada is 40 years old now with their Hoppy Anniversary Ale. It's 65 IBUs if it wanted to zoom in, and 65 IBUs and 6.0 ABV. You can kind of see that now. There you go. This one was packaged on the 3rd of December 2019, and they say definitely at one point here they say this showcases the bold flavors and aromas of a classic West Coast IPA. Intense pine and citrus with deep gold color and slight caramel sweetness. The beer is utilizing a combination of 2-row pale, caramelized malts, acidulated, and oats for the malt. Cluster Cascade Centennial. You see a lot of the C hops, Cascade Centennial, in a lot of these West Coast IPAs, and obviously ale yeast. Yeah, definitely caramel color that I tend to expect from these styles of beers from the West Coast. In that traditional style, this one's a little bit hazier than most, and hazier than especially what thrash metal has homebrewed. But that's all right. There is a little bit of clarity, but not a whole bunch. That nice bright white head, almost like an eggshell color. Does have really good looking lacing to that one for damn sure. In the Speak Aloud glass, which was developed by Rogue and Sierra Nevada. Yeah. The nose on this one is pretty just generally tropical, with some grapefruit and some pineapple, maybe a little bit of orange in the background. Definitely has like almost a toasty white bread kind of. I'm definitely getting the caramel malts in there and some toffee-like sweetness to it. There is some resinous oils to it, but really not a whole bunch there. There is some sweetness underneath everything with the malts, but typically the malts really, and the sweetness of malts in a West Coast IPA really take a back seat to the hoppier flavor. So let's see, at 65 IBUs, this really delivers. A happy 40th Hoppy Anniversary Ale. Cheers.
Yeah. It seems like a very festive artwork there. Yeah. They're happy to be there for 40 years.
I would say, if I'm looking at this as a West Coast IPA and just a beer in general, but especially as a West Coast IPA, it's a very thin and watery beer. What the heck? Oh, 40th anniversary. Watery beer. What
was the ABV, Eric?
6.5 or 6.0, 65 IBUs. And the high side of light, low medium for the body, crisp, clean, ultra refreshing. Lots of refreshing. I'm getting mostly the sweet caramel maltiness to it, toffee malts, the toasty white bread, a little bit of pine in the as it dries. There is grapefruit primarily for the tropical notes to it. It does dry really, really fast, and it's pretty clean. You're left with the pininess of hops. So I'm getting caramel, I'm getting some pine, I'm getting the tropical grapefruit. And I guess if I think about it, I am getting really light notes in the back of the throat of that drying, sort of a bitter quality from the hops to it. But it's just really pretty generally, it's just a dry, kind of a thin, almost watery style for a West Coast IPA. So my general assessment is going to be, I like the $9.99 price for the 6-pack. I cannot complain with that at all. But this was your big and bold attempt for a anniversary beer for your brewery.
Exactly right. Yeah. With all the hype, it should have been a little thicker, maybe. Right?
I'm gonna go with Drunken One on that, but you know, so far it is a decently drinkable beer. We'll come back for the final thoughts and grades. Do I think that this works as a West Coast IPA? I do. I actually will say before I shut up that this might actually be a good beer for people that have never had IPAs or have never had a West Coast style of an IPA. If you ever heard of one, you're nervous to try one, maybe in 2020, you actually could do not so bad on this one and introduce yourself to the style. It's definitely a balanced hop and malt.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Fair enough. Yeah. It sounds a lot like mine, really. It's just not so overwhelming.
I guess
it's pretty yummy.
Yeah, my guess would be because it's a big brand like that, it's probably nationally distributed. They're trying to play it. They're trying to play it safe. They don't. People like us, we want big and bold and beautiful and all that, but they're trying to play it safe to appeal to a wider audience. And it's for people like us who have been spoiled with all these really good craft beers.
That's a good point. That's a very good point there. Yeah, they're playing it safe. That's a very good point. I believe
it's exactly right. It's a big brand like that. They're not going to get too crazy with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, Optimum IPA from Sierra Nevada is a giant mammoth of a IPA. If you really want a good imperial one from Sierra Nevada.
Nice. I'm just kind of
All
going
right.
through the chat here. These are some old comments. Some of these are coming off. I think the nice beer thing was. What?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll get to it. We'll get to
You're
it.
rocking this right now. You got it going on. No, you're doing a fine job.
Yeah, so the nice beer I think that might have been directed towards Thrash with his homebrew. Drunken One, They Like Your Shirt. Flacco's gonna have to look for that one.
This comment.
I think it was still the one that Drunken One had. Of the Space Dust, as well as the New Belgium Voodoo Ranger Imperial is nice, and the other one was in Santan Brewing Moon Juice or Hop Shop.
I think Gabriel Salai reminded me of that one. Santan is in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
Right.
Gabriel Celeste.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do I have a like button? Oh, cool.
You do have a like button. Nobody's touched it the whole damn night.
Does that mean Sierra Nevada is now over the hill? Because it's
no, I don't think that's what that means at all. This one might be though.
Metalhead 1990 is going to try the Bud Light Seltzer next time, and I think he's going to try different IPAs.
I just bought the lemon lime this evening.
If you are into the seltzers, I'll tell you this: Metalhead 1990. The natural light seltzers are much better than the Bud Light seltzers.
Oh damn!
But Catalina lime mixer and Aloha peaches, baby.
IPA.
Check them out.
Aloha
Yep. And the Torpedo IPA is known as an extra IPA, which is it's not going into like a double IPA. It's still lower in ABV, but it has extra hops in it, so it's extra bitter.
It is as true to a West Coast as you can get. You want to talk about a piney, bitter, grapefruit beer? That Torpedo, at least in my opinion, I think it's an excellent IPA. But I can't drink more than like one because the bitterness just sticks to the insides of my cheeks, and as with all West Coast IPAs, and I just can't drink more than a couple of those super bitter beers. They build up and they become unpleasant. For me, I know a lot of people that can just drink West Coast IPAs, like super bitter beers like that all day. I'm not one of those.
They're not hot bombs. I mean, that's when they your palate just goes numb because of all the hops.
You rest your palate.
It's not so much. It's Trish. Cheers, Trish.
Yep,
it's not so much
cheers to Vanessa Kitty there.
IBUs either. We haven't even talked about this yet. I know BuMpY hasn't given his talked about his beer yet, but IBUs are another thing. Maybe we'll talk about it later. IBUs aren't necessarily an indication of how bitter a beer is going to be. It's a well balanced beer with the malt and the hops. You could have 60, 70 IBUs and still have a good malt presence and not be very bitter. It just depends on the balance between the two.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
You'll hear
BuMpY, well, I mean on that different, you have different hops that have the different levels of alpha, beta type stuff. So they kind of there's some that can be like they can have like a harsher bitterness.
Right.
Than another hop that has the same alphas and stuff like that. It's just the different hops can give off like a different note. That's not very pleasant.
I think that's why a lot of companies are straying away from actually listing the IBUs on the label because there's a thing called perceived bitterness. So even if the IBUs are actually 70, 80, 90, even 100. And the perfect example of that is Hop Stupid is 102 IBUs, but it's actually not nearly as bitter as many other beers that I've had that are in the 60 and 70 range. So perceived bitterness is a lot different than IBUs, which is why a lot of companies have strayed away from putting the actual IBUs on the label because they don't want to deter people from buying the beer just by looking at the high IBU count that's listed on the label. So it's all about the balance. And I think a lot of companies now are realizing how to do that, how to balance the hops and the malt. And if the IBUs are up there, it doesn't necessarily mean that the beer is going to be super bitter. Right. So my recommendation would be to try everything.
Try everything. Well, we'll get back into those topics right after
right.
after this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my little beer analysis here, and then
come on, bring
if
it.
there's anybody, I'll leave the StreamYard link into the chat. So if there's anybody in the chat that hasn't hit up one of our little Google Hangout things, if they're not in that, you can join as long as you have a West Coast or American IPA or even an East Coast IPA at this point, since we couldn't find the exact write up for West Coast style BJCP. So I'll leave that in. We can bring other people in, but then we'll go through our scores for the beer. So I'll go ahead and bring myself up, I guess.
Yeah.
The beer that I brought, now going back to what John and Nelly was just saying about not putting the IBUs on the can, from Black Hog Brewing Company. They're out of, I think,
Connecticut.
Okay, Oxford, Connecticut. I have their Piglet, which is a double IPA, and it comes in at 8.8%, and it does not list the IBUs on it.
I like the artwork. It's got two pigs.
Yellow can. I mean, yeah, this poured with, the general like white tight bubbled head, dies down a little bit after a while there, but it can regenerate the head. Coloration of the beer is that kind of deep gold. It's like a deep gold color. It seemed to have more clarity before. It's got a little bit of a haze to it now. And I don't know if it's just because I just poured in the bottom of the can.
Probably.
And there was sediment in it. I don't know. But the first pour I had of this, it was looking a lot more clear. The aromas.
Is that can conditioned or something?
It doesn't say. I have no clue. But there's a lot of like cookie malt sweetness in the aromas. A little bit of a pine note coming up from the hops, and a slight citrus note in there as well. Kind of more on like maybe the orange pith, orange rind. So it's kind of like the more bitter part of an orange, but it is definitely like an orange citrus. The flavors in this thing.
Cheers, right?
Once again, getting the malt kind of right up front with it. It's kind of got like a little graininess. Goes into that sweet cookie malt flavor. Quite a bit of bitterness to this one. If I had to guess the IBUs, being at 8.8%, I'm going to say they're at least 80 to 90. Wow. That's kind of how the bitterness is actually coming off, because after that sweetness from the malt, you get a little bit of that piney type flavor with a little bit of a citrus hint, and then it's just straight like piney bitterness that just lingers on.
Nice.
It almost builds, like as I'm talking, I'm almost getting more and more bitterness coming off of my my tongue. So
I find that beer.
It's pretty good.
Sounds good.
I'd recommend it.
Is that would you say that's kind of a complex beer there with all the stuff going on in it?
No, not super complex. It's a couple notes here and there, but it does do the malt sweetness does come back each time. First thing, kind of washes away the bitterness, but then that like the hops start to take over, kind of mid swallow.
Right. Sounds like a traditional West Coast, because like I was saying earlier, the West Coast IPAs, that bitterness lingers so much, which to me makes it almost undrinkable after like a couple of true West Coast IPAs, because they become so bitter, and that bitterness just lingers on the inside of my mouth and makes it to where it's an unpleasant drinking experience.
Yeah, this one, going back to it, because where this being a double IPA at 8.8%, now in the BJCP write-up of an American IPA, doubles are supposed to be put into another category. So we could have done like a double IPA category coming up, but I probably will in the future anyways, because then it would just be a free-for-all double IPA. But my craft beer store that I go to, the owner, I went in there and just straight up asked him, because I had an IPA last week that actually said West Coast IPA on it, and it would have been great, but I'm not going to do the same beer over again. But he recommended this. It was this beer or another beer, because I was like, what is like the most quintessential West Coast style IPA you can think of? And he actually said, well, these are American IPAs, but they're West Coast, because they got the malt, they got the bitterness, and this definitely nails that. Even though it's a double IPA, this is kind of what I think of as that West Coast style, with it being the malt forward at first to extreme bitterness with pine and citrus notes. Mouthfeel, it's leaving me dry, so it's doing the drying thing. It's got kind of a medium body to it, and just pushing into that medium carbonation level. So I'm going to go ahead and bring us all back as one. Boom.
Bring it on back, boys.
I'll bring up my little stupid banner here that says that it is a Multi Monday.
Monday, right? Well,
And now I'm going to go into the comments, and I'm going to leave the link.
Drunken One actually
get in
posted
here
the
if
link
anybody wants to.
earlier.
Pardon? What's that?
I said that Drunken One, you posted the link earlier. BuMpy was talking about the link in case anybody had a West Coast IPA and they wanted to join.
You posted it again.
Did you put? Well, it's posted again. So if anybody does have,
BuMpy just did it again.
yeah, it has to be this type of the American style IPA, anyways. But now we're going to go back to John and Nelly. I think I've given him plenty of time to think about like what his rating would be. So we will go ahead and present the Nelly.
Is it a good West Coast style?
All right, so yeah, one quick note. We were talking about the IBUs not being posted on the label so much. The IBUs for this were not posted on the label. I had to look it up on the website. A lot of people are doing that. A lot of companies are doing that because they don't want to scare people away with the IBUs. I'm
going to do that because I want to see how close I was when I said.
Because I'm sure, yeah, a lot of times if you can't find it on the label, 9 times out of 10 you can find it on the website. But they're not posting it on the label anymore because they don't want to scare people away. This one is 50, which is kind of getting up there. But drinking this one, and after what 3 of them now, I've had a few, so I've had enough time to really develop an opinion on this. This is, even though this is 50 IBUs, it doesn't have that lingering bitterness, and it's very well balanced. And if somebody looks at the label and they just see those 50 IBUs, they may think, oh, this is going to be very bitter. I'm not going to be able to handle it, or I'm not going to like this beer because it's going to just, be too much. But that's not the case with this. And as the appearance indicates, this is not a New England IPA. It's an American IPA, just as the BJCP guidelines that we're looking at describe it as. But it's more along, it's kind of like a perfect hybrid. You're getting grapefruit and you're getting pine, but the oats that are in here, the more smooth mouthfeel, and the tropical fruit notes that I'm getting, because they dry hop this as well, may have something to do with it, not having the super lingering finish. I think this is a perfectly balanced IPA. I think it takes the best of the West Coast and the best of the East Coast and melds it together into what the BJCP considers an American IPA. So I think it's an excellent American IPA. It's not the best if you're just looking at it from a West Coast standpoint. It's not the best if you're looking at it just from an East Coast standpoint, but it's great overall. And I think that the bitterness is perfectly balanced with the malts. And I'm sorry, I'm blabbing on here, I know. It is 7.7%. So I blame it on the alcohol. If I'm giving a rating, which I think that's what we're doing now, I'm going to go with a 96 out of 100 because I really think that it's a solid A. It's getting up there for me. The fact that the bitterness is not lingering and I could drink more than a couple of them before, it's not becoming an unpleasant experience. A lot of times with the really true to form West Coast style where you're not getting the tropical fruit, where they're super clear filtered, whereas this one's not, the bitterness just builds up, and it becomes an unpleasant drinking experience after 1 or 2 beers. Not to say that the style is not great. I love those beers as well, but I cannot drink more than 1 or 2 of them before I have to move on to something else. I could drink these not all night at 7.7, but I could drink a few of these and not get tired of them because the bitterness is not lingering, and it's a perfectly balanced beer, and it has the best of both worlds between the West Coast and the New England style. So 96 out of 100. I'm sorry. I'm done. I'll shut up. Move along.
Hey, John, shut up.
So I do want to just hit the chat real quick. We got Salimon Sol. He pops in.
So
Cheers, BuMpy in chat. So I want to thank you for joining in here and watching this. It's still going to continue on. It's not ending.
Turn on really good here right now.
We got the Ronnie S. He says John's not a West Coast fan. Obviously.
Who is that guy?
Ronnie
Ronnie S.
Ronnie S.
And
No,
I know Flacco said that's a
am
cool can man.
I am a West Coast fan. I just can't tolerate more than a couple because of that bitterness that I was talking about.
Oh.
The lingering bitterness.
Oh, Ronnie wanted to know if we went through the history of the style yet. Yes, we have.
Yeah, you should have been here. You watch the replay.
Yeah, it's at the very beginning. It's about it's probably about 5 to 10 minutes.
Make sure you hit that thumbs up there, Ronnie.
Yeah. Hit thumbs up, boys.
And tell me
7 minutes.
Tell me what you like, what you don't like, what I'm doing. Metalhead, he loves these harsh, boozed up IPAs.
Watch out, Metalhead.
Let's let John speak to that.
And he has about
and
his
he
love.
did, and he kind of said that. So Flacco agrees. It's a great idea for Mondays. Mondays have been dead for a little bit. We used to have Beer Patrol, and he was doing his Monday live streams, and I would do that, or what was it, Malt Liquor Monday?
Yeah, with
Eric did
man. No, it's Big Daddy. That was his name now. Big Daddy something.
Big Daddy. Wish I could have got a beer to join. I promise I'll be there next time. And Trish has a great stream. Awesome. Appreciate that. Same as Flacco. Hopefully we will have CBP and Trish with us next time. Ronnie, that's a great idea. Drunk One just says it kicks ass. I don't need to bring him up. Just a bit nerdy. We'll bring that up.
No, it's good. I like it. No,
John is an awesome dude. There you go, John.
And there, John.
Shout outs to John.
John and Niall.
Oh yes, and Malt Liquor. Oops, I read it wrong. Havana. Cheers. Thank you for joining.
I hop Malt Liquor.
We were discussing this. I didn't have a name for this right before going on. I was busy at work today. I didn't have really time to think about my channel at all. And that was my idea, was I was going to really try to figure out a name to call this. So we kind of had like a quick discussion before joining this.
5 minutes before.
5 minutes before. So Multi Mondays is what it's going to be called. And I'm like, I think people are going to mistake this for like a Malt Liquor Monday. And
here we go.
Hey, that's all right. You bring them in.
We may, if I can find myself a Malt Liquor, we may end up doing that at some point.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So let's move on to Thrash.
Yeah, we're all going to be like this, BuMpy.
Well, we can bring him on the left. He knows all about Malt Liquor. He was over 5% Malt Liquor, right?
Okay, so I don't like rating my own beers.
100.
Well, I'll never give my own beer 100.
All right.
Other people can give it 100, but yeah, it's to style. I make the beers to what I like. You know, I enjoy the beers that I make. You know, there's a few that get screwed up and didn't come out like I wanted to, but this one actually did come out really good. It's like this guy, I'm going to go in line with John, 96 on this thing. It is really good. I always make it. It's kind of a go-to. I have quite a few go-to beers that you make the same time, temperature, same ingredients, and it comes out the same every time. And this is really good.
Yeah, you know what to expect. Awesome. No, it looks very nice. It's very clear. It holds
Yeah.
nice head. Yeah, it's got nice.
Yeah.
Doing some nice lacing there. Yeah.
It's got some good carbonation. Cheers. That's the only thing I didn't go over is it at the beginning is kind of spritzy, but it fell into a medium, effervescence to it. So yeah, very good. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Cheers.
We'll go on to the drunken one. And
Back to me, huh, boys? All right. So I guess we're giving numbers here. All right. So I got a little glass lacing on mine. I wish my homebrew could do like that, more like Brian's, but I'm working on that bit. Anyway, this is the one more time with what the hell is it? It's the I would recommend it. It's the Stone Neverending Haze. I guess they just came out with it late last year. It is just a 4%, so you can drink quite a few of them. It's got all the flavor. This would be a great time, something in the spring or summertime. A guy could pound down a few of these, just hanging out with the boys. It's got lots of flavor to it. It's kind of a medium mouthfeel because it is just that 4%, maybe a little light, like medium light, whatever. It's not disappointing though. It's got plenty of flavor. I would definitely buy it again. I guess my overall, just to kind of sum it all up real quick, like a 94. 94 it's solid, man. It's solid for what it is. Yeah, it's low in ABV, but maybe that's a plus point to those who don't want to get just hammered down all the time. And not saying I don't like those big old voodoo ranger stuff, but I get the 9% for a reason, right? Yeah, they're $10.99, but you drink a 6-pack, you drink some beer. Says the drunken one, right? But no, these are good. I would buy these again. I would share this with a friend. I would, hey, check this out. If you can find it, go get it, man. It's Stone Brewing, which usually is, I don't know what the wife bought it. She said she's seen the label and it caught her attention. Stone Brewing is usually known for overpriced beers, but I don't know what this costs exactly, but it's a darn good offering, and go find it for yourself. Yeah, 94. Yeah.
All right.
Not bad. Now we hop over to Eric Torsnell and his score.
Right. How about that?
You can't complain about that, Lazy. No,
That's not a bit too bad. You're almost done with it.
Yeah, you can. Well, body-wise and mouthfeel-wise, it allows you to crush said beer fairly easily.
That's right.
We talk about, now that label looks really nice, we talk about the balance. Usually when I drink an IPA, I'm thinking about what I like to call the hop to malt ratio. Registered trademark Thomas Mill 75. And I think this has a great hop to malt ratio. There's not one thing that is overpowering one over the other. However, this is a pretty thin, towards medium, but a pretty thin, watery mouthfeel. 65 IBUs is more perceived in the finish of the beer. It does not leave you cotton mouth dry, but very drying in the mouthfeel. So you're getting things that hops from in the West Coast style can do with its bitterness. However, nothing really lingers all that long. Even the finish with its hoppy bite at the end still isn't lingering on all that long. It could probably use more hops in it to give it a bigger, bolder West Coast flavor. I mean, again, as I read on the bottle, they say that this beer showcases the bold flavors and aromas of a classic West Coast IPA, intense pine and citrus with a deep gold color and slight caramel sweetness. It's not really intense pine or citrus, unfortunately. So I think if that's what they tried to do, maybe on tap is the way to maybe try it. But I think they kind of missed the mark on it a little bit. But I still think an 84 is a pretty good rating. And as I said earlier, I think this is a really good introduction to the style, to West Coast and to hoppier beers with a little bit more ABV than your standard BMC style macro beers, or even your red ales and your amber ale or amber lagers like a Yingling. So good one to try. Don't expect the world of it. And I'm perfectly happy with drinking it and glad it was $9.99. Good price.
Right. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I'll pop into mine, give my quick score and stuff like that, and then we'll move on to another important part of this whole thing right afterwards, which I'll explain when I do this. Because first thing I mentioned was I didn't know what the IBUs were, and I said I thought they were between 80 to 90. So I looked it up, and that'll show up. It is 88 IBUs.
Nice, right on the money. That's
Yeah.
that expertise palate you got there, man.
Yeah.
That's your what do they call it? The guy, the very smart people that sits around, right? Am I saying it right?
Oh, and also in the malt, it does say they use melanoidin or melanoidin.
Melanoidin, yeah.
Which can give off a cookie flavor. So there you go.
He likes his cookies, people.
I love my cookies. so that all it all adds up. What I'm going to say about the Piglet from Black Hog Brewing Company, double IPA. It is hitting pretty much what a West Coast IPA would be. Like I said, the owner of the craft beer store I went to said this is one of the two that you should look for what he had anyways in stock. I think it hits the West Coast style IPA very well, even though it is a double IPA. But so with that said, I'm going to give it a 95 out of 100. It is a big punch to the mouth with the bitterness at the end. It does leave your teeth with a little bit of fuzz on them. But
now that's a descriptor right there. It leaves your teeth with a little bit of fuzz on them. That's a descriptor. I'm sorry.
But yeah. I think it's if you're looking for what like a West Coast style IPA is going to bring you, it's definitely one to go for and just see what that's about, you know. So now we move on to saying cheers to Eclipse Brewing. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, he called you beautiful, but we all suck.
Yeah. No. He says, and the rest of the panel.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Paul.
It's there. Oh wait, it should be
clean the fuzz.
Oh wait, it moved. And the rest of the panel. There we go. So the next step in this new phase of this Multi Monday is I'm going to be conversing with the panel that I have on what we should do next Monday.
We have not rehearsed that.
We need to figure out what type. So are we gonna do a lager type? We're gonna do like an ale type. Where are we gonna land with this? What does everybody want to kind of go for?
Well, this was more of a West Coast. I mean, even though the BJCP only classifies American, it's kind of a little, you know, there's a lot of gray area in there. I think we should keep it with the IBA. It kind of go more sequentially. So I think next week should be New England style IPAs, like specific, like more New England style.
More.
We got one for a New England style IPA. So going ale and New England style IPA.
It sounds fitting after what we did today or tonight. That sounds. That
way you're not jumping all over the place. You can kind of gradually move from style to style and go within, you know, each variation within the style before you move on to the next.
My only worry with that is that if we get into a certain type
Belgians.
That people don't you know, something that's not really popular, and we kind of get stuck within that, like, because I'm going to be hitting like as many as I can.
You just do one. Right. Well, we're here in America. The IPAs are huge here. So I mean, this is just me. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. But we could do the West Coast, right? We could do the New England, and then we could kind of go into we could do the pale ale after that, and then from there we can go.
I kind of see where BuMpY's coming from with that. If you don't like IPAs, then 2 weeks of IPAs suck. You know, whether they're north or east or whatever. You know, so I'm in agreement with BuMpY. What do you guys think, Brian and Eric? What do y'all think?
I think I agree with John from that standpoint, but on the other hand, I think switching it up would be a good idea as well. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of 50-50. I could go either way. BuMpY, you could take a roll of the dice and just say, okay, number 7s is, you know, amber ale, or, you know.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we do.
Go like a Go like a pale ale in between. Nobody hates pale ale, right? I mean, let's go with pale ale maybe for next week, and then we'll go back to the other of the IPA, or I don't know. I mean, I'm spitballing here though. Maybe just switch it up. I don't know, man. What do y'all think? What do you think, Thomas Metal?
I think let's give BuMpY some time to think about it, and let him. We'll all get together and post it. Yeah.
Yeah, do you know how to do a poll on YouTube, BuMpY? Why don't you post a poll and let the viewers decide?
Let the viewers decide? Okay, I don't know how to do a poll on YouTube.
We can. Okay, well, we'll show you.
We'll work on that.
When we get off air here, I'll show you how to do a poll.
Okay, so I guess what we'll do instead of doing the panel, we'll let the viewers decide.
Agreed.
Hopefully those viewers are actually going to view.
Right, and it's up to you to put in what you want to offer. Okay, it's not like they come up with it's like an A, B, C, or D. You know, you put in there what the options are, and they can choose what they want. So it's not
I guess we're drinking malt liquors next week. All right.
So ABC. Well, the thing is, I'm not going to come back to the same style. So once the style is already done, even if that one's like the most requested, it's done.
Right.
Already done.
Either way, you're gonna get through it either way. Yeah.
So this will eventually end because we will run out of styles and types and stuff.
By the time that happens, BuMpY will be coming back around. We'll be old folks by then.
Right. We'll all be old.
I want to smoke beer sometime.
And that was the end. We did an Abbey Ale, and we're.
And that I was like when BuMpY started his Multi Mondays, and I had
Abbey, featuring Abbey Ale.
So is that what we're going to try to do? We're going to try to put out a poll. So you guys,
I would just put I would put the basic style as the choices, and then you could pick whatever you want underneath it.
I choose Natty Ice.
I would say
there's A, B, C, and D. You put on there what you want. You can put whatever styles you want. Okay, we can come up with it after hours here.
When we go off air here, we'll determine 4 choices, A, B, C, and D, that we like, and then we'll let the viewers pick, and whichever one wins out, that's what we do.
Okay. Sound like
that sounds fair. So that's what we'll do.
But it's going to have
so the panel here will stay on. There's nobody else that wants to join that has an IPA they want to run through real quick. We're all good. Going once, going twice. Sold. All right. I want to first off thank my panel, my awesome panel, for joining me on this new adventure. This was something I'm not used to hosting, so it was fun and
quite
entertaining, and all of the other things that go with that. I want to thank the chat for joining in, and thank you for sticking with this whole first attempt at this. Like I said, I'll work on working out kinks. We'll work together, I hope.
I'm not talking about this beer, but
5 heads are better than one. So we'll try to figure out like what would make this run smoother. Chat also, you guys, if you want to leave comments in the video itself as to what you would like to kind of, like how I go about it. If you don't want to see like just one person talk about their beer from start to finish almost, if you'd rather it broken up, also I'll discuss that with the panel when we go off air here. But I'll be doing that right now. So I just want to thank everybody for joining. Cheers and have a fantastic night. And I'll see you all for the next Malt Monday.
Keep malty, you Monday maniacs.
Here's everybody.